Hey guys, Rick Taylor here with KSUSA. Today we're going to talk about how to install your internally routed dropper seat post. If you've already got a post on your bike, go ahead and get it set up so that you're in a comfortable pedaling position where you get full extension where you would be if you're pedaling on flats or a climb. And then what you'll want to do is take a measurement from the center of the rail here down to the center of your bottom bracket, and just make a note of that dimension. Okay, and then we go ahead and take your old seat post off the bike. So we'll go ahead and unscrew that, and we'll pull the whole assembly off the bike and get ready to put our new post on. So we've got our cable installed, following the bike manufacturer's instructions, and now we're ready to go forward with installing the cable clamp. So whether you're running a reverse route or what they call universal route, where you have a pinch bolt up at your remote, or whether you're running the fixed end of the cable and have that run through, you're going to need to put the cable clamp here at this end. The measurement from the ferrule to the bottom of the cable clamp is 15 millimeters, 1.5. Now we're going to put our 3 millimeter in the side opposite of the set screw, and we're going to go ahead and tighten this up, and you're going to see the cable kind of distort. It's going to kind of curve there, which is fine. What we want to do is we're going to put the Allen in one side, and we're just going to push that cable, and we want to end up with this being a right angle here. Okay, so we get that all set up and it looks nice and straight where it comes out. Don't worry about the top, we're going to cut that off. Okay, now another important thing is do not use bicycle cable cutters at this point here. You want to use a diagonal cutter, and you want to put the flush cut side down to the barrel and cut that cable off. And that gives you a nice flush cut here with not much tail hanging out. If you use bike cable cutters, it's going to leave a longer tail, which you don't want. That's going to interfere with the actuator when we put it in. So we're going to go ahead and install the post, and first thing we want to do is install the cable. So you'll see here there's a cutout for your cable itself. We'll put that in and lock it down, and you see the cable went in between that slot there, but there's a cutout on this side. One is a complete loop, the other side is cut out. That's so we can set that in there. Now, if you have a post that has a nylon lower actuator housing, this just slides in and you're good to go. If you have an alloy one, there is a set screw there that is a 1.5 millimeter. So if you have that on your post that you're installing, tighten that set screw up 2 or 3 turns. If you do not have that, no problem, just slide that cable in till it bottoms out. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and use a little bit of fiber grip. We're using the Finish Line branded stuff here, but you can choose your favorite brand. Finish Line we've used for a lot of years, and we haven't found any interaction with any of the bike materials or anything like that, no discoloration, so we can vouch for that one, and it works real well. But we're going to put that on the post, and it's a gel that has silica in it, and it just helps grip. It also inhibits corrosion. So when you have an alloy seat post and a carbon frame, the materials naturally try to share electrons, or swap electrons, I should say. And so that causes galvanic reaction, or like an electrolysis between the two. Where the posts are marked, they laser etch these, and so that aluminum is kind of exposed there. And if you put this over it, it's a good protective layer, and just good insurance that that won't corrode or oxidize to the tube in the future. And if you put a fresh coat of this on every time you do the service on your post, you'll never have a problem with your seat post sticking in the frame. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set that in. Now, as I'm pushing this in, it's important, the cable has to go somewhere, right? It's attached to the bottom of the post. If you just jam that in there and you don't help feed the cable out, you can have it kink up inside, and you're going to have poor performance with your remote and with your dropper. So make sure as you're pushing this in, you're feeding the cable out from the front of the bike so that it doesn't get jammed up in there, okay? And for right now, we're just gonna go ahead and use the Allen wrench to just snug this slightly. We're gonna use a torque wrench on this later, but for right now, we'll just get this so we can get the saddle set up, okay? Now I would go ahead and, if you haven't already, pull the clamp bolts back off of this for a second, and I want to show you a couple little tricks. Okay, so the first trick is going to be a little bit of grease right here where you have metal to metal contact, and we'll set that in place. Okay, the second trick is going to be that fiber grip. We're going to put a little bit on the inside edge here where the saddle rail is going to clamp, and we're going to put a little bit on these two lower parts here. And that's also where the rails are going to go. You don't want to put any here, just on those clamp points. Grease goes here on this bottom cradle. Okay, and then we'll take a little bit of that grease and we're going to put that on the head of the bolts. And I like to put just a little bit here on the cylindrical bearings, or cylindrical nuts rather. Okay, we'll set the top clamp on, put the bolt through, just thread a couple of turns. Just enough to hold it in place. Okay, same thing here. Just a couple turns. Okay, now we'll take our saddle, and if you put it in one side like this and then just kind of slide it through, you're kind of putting it at an angle and then rolling it over the clamp. It makes it really easy to pop that in there. Okay, now if you just pull this downward and make sure that that rear cylindrical nut is seated, if you just push down on the nose of the saddle and tighten it, that holds everything in position and that nut doesn't spin around on you. And get it to about where you think is going to be level position where you want it. And then you can flip it the other way, and it might be a little harder. You may or may not be able to put pressure on the back of the saddle and do it this way. But if you can't do it that way, you can also just, in this case, it's loose enough I could just turn this by hand. Okay, but just take up that slack. And once you get it closer, then you can certainly just put a little bit of upward pressure on it, and that's going to keep that from spinning. Now, it's also important when you're setting this up that you pay attention to the limit marks on the saddle. Those are from the saddle manufacturer, and that's the area they intend for you to clamp to. In some cases, it may be a hollow rail with solid in the center, or whatever the case, they don't want you clamping past those points. So make sure you're within that range when you adjust your saddle. And then we're going to go ahead and tighten it down just to essentially finger tight. Okay. Now, the next step I would do now that you've got this in place is I'd go ahead and take that measurement, and you're going to measure back up to the center of the seat rail, to the center of your bottom bracket here, and just make sure that you get that measurement set back up to match what you took earlier. Take your 4 Newton meter torque wrench and tighten your binder here, okay? So that's all set up and tight. Now you're gonna wanna take your bike and set it on the ground so that it's level, and adjust your tilt to where you want it. If you want it to go nose down, you loosen the back, tighten the front, and vice versa. So get it to where it's hand tight and where you want it. And then you want to use a good quality torque wrench and torque these down to the specification listed on the clamp on your particular post. So make sure you read that and torque to that spec. Most important is that these are torqued evenly. So So make sure you alternate back and forth, and do use the torque wrench, because if you don't get them even, your seat can slide forward or back and you'll have a real hard time keeping it tight and in position. So we'll go ahead and torque that down, okay? And do that front and back. And then once we get that everything set where we want it, we're good to go. Now, one thing that we did not discuss in this video is setting up your remote, and that was intentional. We have several KS remotes that are compatible with all of our droppers, and you can choose which one is best for you. So depending on which one you've chosen, if you go to kssuspension.com and look at the YouTube listings, there will be a video there for your specific remote that you've chosen. Click on that and watch that video, and it'll take you through how to put that remote on your handlebar, and we'll get you dialed in and ready to ride.